Hey, my name is Mike, and this is a too long didn't read guide for the Opulence encounter in the Battle of Dazar'alor. To start the fight, you'll have to kill too many bosses around the same time. Split your raid up so that most of your ranged is on the hand of Inzashi, and your melee is on Yalat's Bulwark. You'll be fighting these bosses in their own sections, and there will be 8 separate chambers that you go through. Each time you take 10% off the boss's health, he will move on to the next chamber, engulfing the previous one in flames. These chambers each have their own traps within them. Chambers with little doors on the sides will periodically shoot flames out of them that you need to avoid. Some chambers will fixate a random player with a red beam. This beam will create a fire patch on the ground as it moves, so if it's on you, don't run it through the raid. The one corner chamber will deal increasing damage to everyone. If someone falls below 50% health, they will get a 10-second buff. Only let people fall below 50% health if you know for sure it won't cause a wipe. You want to get out of this chamber quickly. Some chambers will put Hex of Lethargy on random people, which deals damage to them whenever they move. This needs to be dispelled. In the 7th chamber, you will see 7 jewels on the sides. You can click on them to gain a permanent buff. You can take only one jewel. The same jewel can be used by multiple players, and some jewels won't be clickable because they're not relevant to your role. The diamond should be picked up by the tanks. It absorbs damage, and once all the damage has been absorbed, it'll take 30 seconds to recharge. The amethyst should be picked up by one healer on each side. It increases your haste and makes your heals put a 1-minute buff on people that reduces their shadow damage taken. Players with this buff who take shadow damage will restore mana to anyone within 10 yards. Whenever anyone takes one of the jewels, they will get a 30-second debuff called Thief's Bane, which will kill you when it expires unless the healer with the amethyst gives you that 1-minute buff. The sapphire should be picked up by the other healers. It makes your heals apply a stacking 30-second damage buff to targets, and at 5 stacks, this buff is replaced by a 12-second buff that increases their healing and damage done by 100%. The ruby should be picked up by at least one ranged player per side. Your abilities will put a stacking debuff on the boss that makes him take 1% more damage per stack. This debuff cannot be applied more than once per second though. The topaz should be picked up by a couple other ranged players who will be standing by themselves for the rest of the fight. Doing so will grant you a stacking buff. If you stand near someone, you will lose stacks. When this buff gets to 100 stacks, you gain a 20-second buff called Grossly Incandescent. With this buff, you will stand near the largest group of people to increase their crit chance by 100%. The opal should be picked up by every other DPS. Each time you attack a new enemy, you get a permanent stacking 2% damage buff. The emerald gives you a stacking damage buff while you stand still, but reduces stacks quickly as you move. My guild did not have anyone pick this up because we like the effects of the opal better. In the 8th chamber, the mini-bosses will begin dealing raid-wide AoE. Both the mini-bosses do Crush, which is a frontal cone that does raid-wide AoE and stuns you if you're hit. Yalat's Bulwark has another frontal ability called Flames of Punishment, and he'll rotate clockwise as he does this. In the 8th chamber, this hits a much larger area in front of him. The Hand of Inzashi will apply an 8-second dot called Volatile Charge to random players that hits anyone near you, so move away from people. When it expires, it'll leave a permanent orb on the ground that deals damage to anyone nearby. In the 8th chamber, this ability does more damage and the orbs hit a larger area. Once one of the mini-bosses dies, Opulence will begin to spawn. Do not enter his room or attack him until both constructs are dead, or else he'll begin casting a spell that, if it finishes, increases his damage done and health by 100%. Opulence puts liquid gold on random people, which is a 12-second dot that drops a yellow puddle on the ground when it expires. You want to keep all that gold for yourself, so run away from people. On heroic, he also puts coin shower on random people. After 10 seconds, this will deal a bunch of damage split amongst everyone, so run this into melee because they all stink and need a shower. Throughout the fight, the boss will do Whale of Greed, which is a channeled 10-second raid-wide AoE. If the amethyst healer has healed everyone to give them the shadow buff, this will do less damage. When this channel is completed, the boss will get a stacking 15% damage increase buff. He also spawns Spirit of Gold adds on himself that should be gripped, stunned, and slowed. They move towards the piles of gold on the outside of the room, and if they get there, they'll start spawning yellow swirlies on the ground. When you fight Opulence, tanks should be swapping as their diamond jewel buff is depleted. On heroic, this happens faster because the boss does coin sweep, which hits for a lot. That was a too long didn't read guide for the Opulence encounter. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider following me on Twitter. Thanks for watching and have an awesome day!